Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism, by Amanda Montell. Introduction. Imagine you're 13 years old. You're walking down the street on a normal afternoon, and you hear something strange coming from an open window. It's a sound, a kind of bewitching buzz of voices, chanting in a language you don't understand. You look up and see people dressed head to toe in white. They look serene, peaceful. They look like they belong. This is what happened to a young woman named Tasha. She was a first-generation kid, feeling a little lost, a little lonely, as so many of us do at that age. And that sound, that sense of community, drew her in. She peeked inside the door of that Kundalini yoga studio and asked who they were. The receptionist told her about the science of the mind, and Tasha, not knowing what it meant but feeling a pull, decided to try a class. Inside, the foreign prayers and the strange new words felt ancient, holy. She felt like she was a part of something bigger than herself. 8 years later, Tasha was a full-time instructor in this group, teaching celebrities like Demi Moore and Russell Brand. She had a new name, a new identity, a new family. But what she didn't realize was that the beautiful, enchanting language that drew her in was the very same tool that would be used to control her, to isolate her, and to make her believe things that, from the outside, would seem impossible. That's the journey we're going on today. We're diving into a fascinating book by Amanda Montell called Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism. This isn't just a book about those extreme, headline-grabbing cults we see in documentaries. It's about something much more subtle, and much more universal. It's about the power of language. By the end of our time together, you're going to have a new superpower. You'll be able to hear the hidden codes, the secret triggers, and the persuasive techniques that are all around us, not just in cults, but in our fitness classes, in the companies we work for, on our social media feeds, and even in the way we talk to our friends. You'll learn to recognize the language of fanaticism, a language the author calls cultish, and once you learn to hear it, you won't be able to unhear it. This is the secret to understanding how ordinary people get drawn into extraordinary worlds, and how you can navigate them with your eyes wide open. Book summary. So, let's start with that word. Cult. When you hear it, what comes to mind? Is it a remote commune? Shaved heads? Poisoned Kool-Aid? For most of us, the word conjures images of something dark, dangerous, and, most importantly, something that happens to other people. Weak people. Gullible people. Not us. But the author, Amanda Montell, invites us to look closer. She asks a brilliant question. What do a young woman who gives up her life for a yoga group and another young woman who becomes obsessed with her CrossFit gym have in common? One ended up with deep psychological trauma, and the other with a strained hamstring and some overpriced leggings. The consequences were vastly different, but the methods of influence, the language used to create a sense of us versus them, to build community, to justify behavior, were almost identical. This is the central idea of cultish. Influence doesn't exist as a simple on or off switch. It's not a binary of cult or not a cult. Instead, it's a spectrum. A continuum. At one end, you have healthy, life-giving communities, sports fans, music lovers, a tight-knit group of friends. At the other, you have destructive, life-destroying groups like Jonestown or Heaven's Gate. And in between, you have, well, just about everything else. Fitness studios, startup companies, political movements, online wellness gurus, even makeup brands. We are, by our very nature, cultish beings. Since the dawn of time, humans have needed two things to survive and thrive: a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. We are not built for loneliness. Our brains are wired to release feel-good chemicals when we participate in group rituals, like chanting or singing together. We have an ingrained, primal fear of being alienated from the tribe. It's this deep, fundamental human need that charismatic leaders have learned to tap into and, in some cases, exploit. In the past, organized religion was the default place to find this community and meaning. But today, especially for your generation, that's changing. More and more people are identifying as spiritual but not religious. Yet the need for community and purpose hasn't gone away. So, where do we find it? We find it at SoulCycle. We find it in a startup with a cult-like company culture. We find it following a self-help guru on Instagram. These new cults are sprouting up everywhere, promising to give us what the old institutions no longer can: an identity, a community, and a set of rules to live by. And what is the single most powerful tool for building these worlds? It's not drugs or force or some magical form of brainwashing. It's language. Language is how a leader builds a mini-universe, complete with its own values, truths, and rules. It's how they create an us and a them. And Montell argues that all charismatic leaders, from the most dangerous cult leaders to the most inspiring SoulCycle instructors, use the same basic linguistic toolkit. To understand this toolkit, let's journey to the most extreme end of the influence spectrum. Let's talk about Jonestown. You've probably heard the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid. We use it casually to mean someone is blindly following a trend. I guess I drank the Kool-Aid and finally bought a Peloton, someone might say. But for the survivors of the People's Temple, this phrase is horrifying. Because they know the real story. First, it wasn't Kool-Aid. It was a cheaper brand called Flavor Aid. And more importantly, the 900 people who died in Guyana in 1978 did not do so mindlessly. Many were forced, either by injection or at gunpoint. They were children, families, who had followed a man named Jim Jones not to die, but in search of a better life, a socialist paradise free from the racism and inequality of 1970s America. So how did it end so tragically? How did Jones convince so many people to follow him to the ends of the earth? The answer, survivors say, was his mastery of language. Jim Jones was a linguistic chameleon. With older, church-going folks, he spoke like a reverend, quoting the Bible. With young, progressive activists, he was a political intellectual, quoting Nietzsche. He had this incredible ability to speak your language, to make you feel as if he had known you your entire life. This is a technique some call love bombing, an intense shower of validation and attention used to gain trust and, eventually, control. Jones was a master of the first tool in the Cultish toolkit, creating an us versus them dichotomy. He did this by crafting a special vocabulary. His followers were my children, and everyone else was part of the outside forces. Defectors were traitors. The corrupt government was run by hidden rulers. This special jargon does two things. First, it makes insiders feel special, chosen, and part of an exclusive club. Second, it makes the outside world seem not just different, but inferior and threatening. This technique isn't unique to Jonestown. Almost every group on the spectrum uses some form of it. In the Heaven's Gate UFO group, members were students of the Kingdom of Heaven, while outsiders were part of a Luciferian program. Even in CrossFit, the gym is a box and the instructors are coaches, subtle linguistic shifts that bond the group together and separate it from the ordinary world of gyms and trainers. Once that us versus them world is established, leaders use a second powerful tool, loaded language. This is when ordinary words are given a new, emotionally charged meaning. Montell tells the story of Tasha, the young woman from the yoga group 3Ho. In normal English, calling someone an old soul is a compliment, meaning they are wise beyond their years. But in 3Ho, it was a terrifying term. It meant you had been reincarnating over and over, failing to get it right each time. Years after leaving, Tasha still shudders when she hears the phrase. Leaders also use euphemisms to soften harsh realities. Jim Jones never talked about death. He called it the transition or stepping over quietly to the next plane. The leaders of Heaven's Gate didn't tell their followers to commit suicide. They instructed them to exit their vehicles to board the spacecraft to the next evolutionary level above human. This language slowly conditions people to accept ideas that would otherwise be horrifying. Now, imagine you're in one of these groups. You're starting to have doubts. The leader's promises aren't coming true, and life on the inside is harder than you expected. You try to voice your concerns, but every time you do, you're met with a simple, dismissive phrase that shuts the conversation down. This is the third and perhaps most insidious tool, the thought-terminating cliché. These are catchy, definitive-sounding phrases that halt critical thinking. You've heard them in everyday life. Everything happens for a reason. It is what it is. Boys will be boys. They're semantic stop signs. They put an end to complex discussions and relieve us of the uncomfortable work of thinking too hard. In cultish groups, these clichés are weaponized. When a follower in Jonestown questioned Jones, he might shut them down with, "It's all the media's fault? Don't believe them." In Scientology, if the group's complex belief system doesn't make sense, it's not the system's fault, it's yours. You must have misunderstood words, and you're forced into a dizzying process called word clearing, where you have to look up every single word in a sentence, down to A and the, until you finally just agree to stop questioning things. The combination of these tools, and us versus them worldview, emotionally loaded language, and thought-terminating clichés, creates a powerful psychological bubble. It's not brainwashing in the sci-fi sense of wiping someone's mind clean. Montell points out that most psychologists see brainwashing as a pseudoscientific myth. You can't force someone to believe something they are completely unwilling to believe. Instead, this language works on people who are already open to it. It gives them permission to believe. And this is where we move from the extreme end of the spectrum into areas that might feel a little more familiar. Let's talk about multi-level marketing, or MLMs. You've seen them on your social media feeds. A friend from high school you haven't spoken to in years suddenly sends you a message, "Hey girl, you have such a fun energy. Have you ever thought about becoming a boss babe and making a full-time income from home?" Companies like Amway, LuLaRoe, and Herbalife operate on a pay-and-recruit model that is, mathematically, almost guaranteed to lose money for 99% of people who join. So why do so many people get sucked in and stay in, even when they're going into debt? Because MLMs are masters of cultish language. They create an intense us versus them world. People with traditional 9-to-5 jobs are looked down upon for having a job, a jackass of a boss. MLM members, on the other hand, are entrepreneurs, CEOs, and mompreneurs on a mission to achieve financial independence. Their language is loaded with toxic positivity and quasi-religious promises. This isn't just about selling leggings or essential oils, it's a movement. It's a life-changing opportunity. Many MLMs explicitly tie their mission to God, weaving in the prosperity gospel, the idea that financial wealth is a sign of divine blessing. And they are masters of the thought-terminating cliché. If you question whether the business model is a pyramid scheme, you're met with a stock defense. Pyramid schemes are illegal. If you're not making money, it's not because the system is flawed. It's because you didn't believe enough. You didn't work hard enough. You have stinkin' thinkin'. This is a form of gaslighting, making you doubt your own reality and blame yourself for the system's failures. Now, let's bring it even closer to home. To a place where many of us go to find community, release stress, and feel good about ourselves, the gym. Or, more specifically, the modern boutique fitness studio. Montell calls this world cult fitness, and it's a perfect example of the healthier, more benign end of the influence continuum. When you walk into a SoulCycle studio, the walls are covered in mantras: we aspire to inspire, addicted, obsessed, unnaturally attached to our bikes. The instructor isn't just a trainer, they're a guru, a therapist, a spiritual guide. They lead you on a journey, a 45-minute exorcism where you don't just change your body, you change your life. The language is highly ritualized. There are chants, affirmations, call and responses. In a class called Intensity, you punch the air while shouting, "I am powerful beyond measure." This might sound bizarre to an outsider, but for the people inside that dark, candlelit room, it's a transcendent experience. It's a space where they feel safe, seen, and part of something bigger. It gives them what church used to give older generations: ritual, community, and meaning. For the most part, this is healthy. The key difference between a SoulCycle class and a destructive cult is that the ritual time is limited. When the class is over, you unclip from your bike, and you get to go back to your normal life. The exit costs are low. No one is going to threaten you or force you to disconnect from your family if you decide to try Pilates instead. But even here, on the gentler end of the spectrum, the potential for exploitation exists. When instructors are elevated to godlike status, abuses of power can follow. When a company like Core Power Yoga uses a spiritual concept like returning the karma to coerce instructors into working for free, it's twisting the language of enlightenment for financial gain. Finally, we arrive at the newest and perhaps most pervasive cult of all, the one in your pocket: social media. In the past, to join a cult, you had to physically go somewhere. A church, a commune, a yoga studio. Today, the barrier to entry is as low as a double tap. The internet has given rise to a new kind of leader: the spiritual influencer. Gurus like Benchinu Masara and Teal Swan use Instagram and YouTube to build massive followings, promising their followers access to higher vibrations, alternate dimensions, and even the secrets to becoming a human god. They use all the classic cultish tools. They create an us versus them dynamic, where their followers are awake and the rest of the world is trapped in the matrix. Their language is loaded with pseudo-scientific jargon, quantum fields, upgrading your DNA, 5D consciousness, to create an illusion of elite, secret knowledge. And their feeds are filled with thought-terminating cliches disguised as inspirational quotes, designed to shut down logic and reason. Masara literally tells his followers to start destroying their allegiances to logic. The algorithm itself acts like a cult leader. It studies you, learns what you believe, and then feeds you a perfectly curated reality that reinforces those beliefs, sending you deeper and deeper down rabbit holes until you rarely encounter an opposing viewpoint. This is how a seemingly harmless wellness community can slowly bleed into the world of conspiracy theories like QAnon. The language overlaps, the Great Awakening, do your research, trust the plan, and the algorithm connects the dots, creating a pipeline from yoga influencers to dangerous political extremism. In this world, we are all simultaneously followers and the leaders of our own tiny cults, curating our beliefs and broadcasting them to our audience. Social media has, in a way, made a cult for everyone. Commentary. So, after this journey through yoga groups, pyramid schemes, and the dark corners of the internet, what's the big takeaway? Is the lesson to become a cynic, to trust no one and join nothing? I don't think so. In fact, I believe the message of Cultish is the opposite. It's not a warning to run away from community, but a guide on how to run toward it with your eyes open. Amanda Montell shows us that the desire to belong, to find meaning, and to believe in something bigger than ourselves is not a weakness. It's one of the most beautiful and essential parts of being human. The danger isn't in the seeking, it's in being unaware of the tools that can be used to manipulate that search. The most powerful lesson from this book is that language is not just descriptive, it is creative. It builds worlds. And when you understand the architecture of that language, the US verses, them framing, the loaded words, the conversation-stopping cliches, you can't be trapped by it. You gain the power to choose which worlds you want to be a part of. So, here are a few simple things you can start doing today, armed with this new knowledge. First, listen for exclusivity. When you encounter a group, whether it's online, at work, or in your social life, pay attention to how they talk about outsiders. Is there a genuine sense of welcome, or is there a subtle, or not so subtle, language of superiority? Special jargon and secret code words can be fun, but they can also be a red flag that a group's identity is built on looking down on others. Second, question the cliches. When you're faced with a complex problem and someone offers a simple, neat, packaged answer that discourages further thought, it's just God's plan. Don't be ruled by fear. The media is propaganda? Pause. Ask yourself, Is this phrase opening up the conversation, or is it trying to shut it down? Real wisdom is rarely found in a bumper sticker. And finally, trust your gut. Both your logical thoughts and your emotional instincts are there for a reason. If a leader's language makes you feel confused, or small, or like you're the one who's crazy for having doubts, that is a form of gaslighting. A healthy community, a worthy leader, will never ask you to sacrifice your own sense of reality. They will stand up to scrutiny. Understanding the language of cultish doesn't mean you have to quit your favorite workout class or unfollow every spiritual teacher on Instagram. It means you can participate with awareness. You can enjoy the community, the inspiration, the ritual, without letting it define your entire reality. You can keep one foot in that special world, and one foot firmly planted in your own. That was a summary of Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. We've journeyed through the main ideas today, but I'll be perfectly honest with you, a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It shows you the layout, the key cities, the major roads. But it can never replace the experience of actually walking those streets yourself. The real magic of this book happens when you read it. It's in the quiet moments, when a specific story or a clever turn of phrase connects with your own life in a way you didn't expect. This summary is here to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've explored today sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you hear the world around you. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Doing so ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the world's most fascinating minds. Your support helps us keep growing together. Thank you for listening.